This week on New to You, Love for Sale, Part 1, Town Van Zant's, Tecumseh Valley. Hey everybody, welcome to the New to You show. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt. With me is
Keith Vincent and
Julian Cage
a
and
returning guest,
Adam Mater.
All right,
Woo-hoo,
Adam,
Adam's
welcome back.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
you know, Adam, you're welcomed to a new season 4. Just so you know, there's more thrills, more adventure, more backstab,
Better, yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell the tensions are running high
So
in
much
here. You
drama
guys, a lot of
in season
shifty
4.
eyes, a lot of knives under the table.
Yep, we've been slowly removing our guests,
And we've
from the
done away
list.
with the rose
This is the year we
ceremony this
crossed them
season.
off.
Oh man, will I get a rose at the end of the episode?
No, it's gone.
On your
That's
grave.
done.
If they find the body.
Once a year, Adam. So that's why this is Love for Sale.
Mm-hmm. That's the reason.
what a
why.
transition.
We'll edit that later.
So this is a recommendation and review podcast where
Season 4 of it.
where we give you all kinds of awesome things to check out or tell you to not check them out.
Mm-hmm. We tell you either way whether you should or shouldn't.
Usually we start off saying how much we love something, and it weirdly turns by the end of the episode, and we're sort of like...
Yeah, at the end of every episode, we're like, yeah, you're right. That was lousy.
Yeah.
We shouldn't recommend it.
Never lay your eyes upon this work.
Well, the goal is we're oars. We get in there, we slice it open, dig through the entrails, pick it apart, and
What is that, an orer?
like a necromancer, really, it's a diviner.
Like a ghoul?
Yeah, we divine.
Like a
Like
ghoul?
horse
we
specs.
dig up old graves?
No, we use fresh animals.
Oh, okay.
Or the fresh picks from our.
Isn't that an auger?
No, augurs are bird. They look at the sky and
Oh.
locations of the sky.
Okay.
But we're fortune tellers.
But we use the
We
innards
tell you whether you're
creatures.
going to like the pick we have,
Mhm.
depending on what it looks like inside the pick. After
We are
torn
pretty
it
much
apart.
that creepy old lady in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, who lives in the basement of the castle. Of,
Morgan
Sheriff-
Freeman.
No, Sheriff of Nottingham's, foster mom.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman.
No.
Don't open the box.
Do you want some more? Or what? That was his famous line.
Oh, okay, got it.
I think.
Is that in that Penguins movie? The one about penguins?
Yeah.
yeah.
Which was directed by the guy who made Mad Max.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
That explains it.
Does it?
It's such a weird movie.
It's sort of like a post-apocalyptic world in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A better world.
I also
But
watched
Babe is also made by.
that. Yeah, and I watched all of them in black and white
Good job.
in the theater.
Mm-hmm. And Thomas Hardy's in all of them.
Yeah, he's the pig.
The Penguin.
My name is Babe. Babe is my name.
All right, so we're going for Love for Sale.
Mhm.
We'll let people talk about why their pick falls under that category. But Keith, you're up first this week. Why don't we go into your pick?
Secretly someone know about the sun, the moon, and stars. The name she gave was Caroline, the daughter of a miner, and her ways were free, and it seemed to me the sunshine walked beside her.
Okay, we're going to talk about Towns Van Zant's song called Tecumseh Valley. The theme is love for sale, and I guess I just kind of took it at face value and said I'm gonna feature a song about a prostitute. Done, easy. I was gonna talk about Moulin Rouge, but I'm like that's too on the nose. And besides, I guess a lot of people hate that movie.
And some people don't have noses after the syphilis.
or the consumption or what?
Well, the
TB?
consumption is the lungs.
Dropsy?
Well, she dies of consumption.
Wasn't Dropsy a monster in Staten Island?
Wait, she dies of consumption in the song?
Well, she dies of tuberculosis, right?
Yeah.
And you're talking about in Tecumseh Valley?
No, I'm talking about in Moulin Rouge.
Oh, I never made it to the
Les
end.
Miserables.
Never made it to the end.
No.
Spoiler alert, she dies.
I don't even know
But you know that
I don't
from the
even know
first
who the she is you're referring to, so this is all good. It's fine.
But I'm going to talk about one of my favorite songwriters, Townes Van Zandt, and he wrote this just devastatingly sad song, a record that came out, I believe, in 1973 called Our Mother the Mountain. And there's a track on it called Tecumseh Valley. A lot of his songs kind of revel in the just kind of like almost existential ennui of everything. He, people make sad songs, but he makes all-out tragedies. There's a kind of a history of songs about ladies who kind of end up becoming prostitutes. House of the Rising Sun is a really famous one. What's so great about it is House of the Rising Sun is that it's told from the point of view of the lady who said, she's warning other people not to follow in her footsteps, the House of the Rising Sun. So in a way, it's kind of a morality tale. But what I like about Tecumseh Valley is there's absolutely no sorrow about it. I mean, there's a lot of sorrow in the song, but the fact that that she ends up being a prostitute is almost told so matter-of-factly that it's not even the tragic part of the story. The tragic part of the story is all the events that led to her being so desperate that's desperate and heartbroken that's what she ended up doing.
Right. Oh, and sex worker is a term that we'll use.
Is prostitute not?
Yeah, that's not kosher anymore.
And if I accidentally say prostitute, I don't mean to hurt anyone's
We'll
feelings.
bleep it out.
Right. But it's a song about a girl from kind of out of the town who comes into the city looking for work because she comes from a really small mining. The song's very vague about she comes from Spencer, whatever that means. Is it a town? Is it whatever? But it's her dad's a miner. Basically, they don't have enough resources to last through the winter, so she goes into town to try to look for work.
Because of regulations, rampant regulations.
Yeah.
Just killing the industry.
And
wind turbines.
Yeah.
And one of the great things is the narrator of the song seems like this is all inferred, but the narrator him or herself seems like they're good friends with this person, or they became friends or something at a time, because they are at points very vague, but at also points they never talk down about this person. They just talk about Caroline, who's the protagonist of the story, or victim of the story, I guess. They speak about her as just like when we're first introduced to her, the narrator says that it always seems like sunshine walked beside her. She just had this hope about her, and life just crushes that hope over the length of this song. She comes to town looking for work. She's not asking favors. She finally finds a job slinging brews at Gypsy Sally's, I guess a local tavern. I mean, that's all they say about it. She tends bar at Gypsy Sally's. The idea is that she's going to save enough money to go back home and help her father out. When spring finally comes around, she's raised enough money to get back, and when she gets there, her dad died over the winter. Feeling like all her toiling and working went for nothing, she just kind of decided, forget it, forget everything, nothing matters. She kind of goes into a nihilistic, what I assume is a nihilistic turn, and just decides nothing matters. The song says she took to whoring, and that's all it says about it. Like, after that, she's just decided, why care about anything? And like I said, it's very matter of fact, and it's not at all judgmental. He just says she took to whoring out on the streets with all the lust or love, depending upon which version you hear.
Don't they also change? Doesn't it say like whoring on the streets in one and walking
the
streets or
exactly,
something?
yeah. So one is probably the radio edit or something, but the older version of it that you hear, the more kind of like buttoned down it is. And as he got older, the live versions, he always says whoring.
Well, what's it like for the sake of the song? That's his first album, 68.
Is that this song comes on?
It's on both versions.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, for the sake of the song, then I'm sure is the version where she says she went out walking, and therefore it's a little more vague, except there was a common term for a sex worker called a street walker, so I guess it wasn't very, it wasn't coded very difficultly.
And that's someone like who normally can only live in the forest, but then at day they like walk the street like a day walker.
Mm-hmm. It's there's a Kink song about it.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's it. I mean, it's basically the rest of the song is then she finally died, or I'm assuming she committed suicide because she left a note. And on the note was "Fare thee well, Tecumseh Valley."
Weird note.
Well, I don't know if you just hate everything, just like "Fare thee well."
It's like "Good morning,
world."
Vietnam.
Yeah, F you, Earth. But the end of the song, it repeats the beginning. They say your name was Caroline. So I think that's kind of neat because I think it could be read in two different ways. It's almost as if the narrator is kind of, saying it again as almost like a, memorial. But at the same time, it could also serve as, and here comes another one. You know what I mean? Here comes another kind of hopeful person that the world is going to beat down and, turn to desperation. That's about it. That's all I have to say about it. I mean, I have covered Townes Van Zandt before on this podcast. I believe I talked about a song he wrote called Katie Bell about his daughter at one point. And I think the
Same story.
The theme,
Yeah, she walked the street.
the theme of that show though,
Dad
was
wasn't
sad,
making
I
enough
think.
money.
Daughter of a guitarist.
Loser dad.
But he's just a guy I just love. I always come back to Townes Van Zandt. I'm always happy to listen to his songs, and anytime I can talk about him, I do. I'll go a little bit into him. I've covered this before, and a lot of people already know about Townes.
So
but for
not,
those who
not new to you, then
maybe
if you
not
listen to this
well,
show.
maybe you could. Maybe you were a person who heard Townes Van Zandt, my covering him, and all you listened to was that Katie Bell song over and over again.
That's true.
And so this is my opportunity to say, hey, guess what? He had more than one song.
Right. Or like if you
And
liked
this is
our
one
Big
of
Lebowski episode and when
Yeah.
you watched that, you heard him cover a Rolling Stones song.
Yep.
Mhm.
Dead Flowers.
Yep.
So he was born in March 7th, 1944 in Fort Worth, Texas. His family were connected to oil, like he's an oil prince,
Yeah, he's
I
in
guess.
money, yeah.
And they had there's even a county named after them in Colorado, named after his family.
Is that where he's from? Colorado?
He's from Texas.
Texas.
His family.
Oh, sorry, Texas. Yeah.
So he's got family in Colorado and Texas. He went to school at the University of Colorado. I think I went into this before where he had kind of a breakdown in college and he jumped out a window.
He was diagnosed manic depressive.
Yeah, and to treat it, they gave him electroshock therapy, which he claims completely erased any memories of his childhood, which is a real bummer. But I think that that's the true meaning of the song Poncho and Lefty, but I can cover that some other time, unless you guys want to hear it now. So when he dropped out of school after that, I was just playing music in Dallas until around 1968 when a guy said, hey, if you're going to be playing music, you're going to be playing country and Western, you should be playing in Nashville. So he moved to Nashville, and he was really, on the ground floor of creating a kind of a homegrown, almost like a rebellion scene in Nashville of these like kind of more down-to-earth songwriters and not kind of making kind of fluffy country music.
Outlaw country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm sure they can be bunched in with the outlaw country guys, but I feel like they were even rebelling against them. Those guys they were kind of the grunge, the grunge of
Right, yeah.
of the country scene at the time,
Like really like sad songs and stuff.
Well,
like
just kind of
Stone
like
Townes Van Zandt.
the kind of like, oh, here's another sad song, and it's about a tour bus, and they're going to be playing steel guitar, and he's like, I'm just going to sing. I can out sad any song you have, And he's like, go ahead and put silver dollars all over your car. I'm going to live in this busted up old trailer in Franklin. It's like.
So he started emo country.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. But his whole thing is he was never really appreciated fully until after his death. But even while he was alive, a lot of people considered him definitely one of the top country music songwriters. Some people consider him one of the great American songwriters.
He's a songwriter.
He is.
When did he die?
Sadly, he died in
1997.
1997. Yeah.
Okay. So he had a
Shortish life.
yeah.
Yeah, one of his, I guess you could call it. I'm sure. I mean, it's more like his friend, but it's kind of like his protege. Steve Earle really broke through in the pop charts, and he threw a lot of attention back to Townes. Anytime he could, he would sing his praises, and also because of that, we have some really great recordings of Townes later in his life, doing live shows with Steve Earle
Cowboy
and
Junkies.
and doing I don't know if I know the Cowboy Junkies one. What's that?
He wrote a song for the Cowboy Junkies
Oh,
and toured
wow.
with them in the early 90s.
That's cool. One of his other songwriting buddies from that time, the three of them put out a couple records from live in Nashville from the Bluebird Cafe. I will come back to his name when I remember it. But that's about it. He died in 97, and he left behind just amazing, amazing records. And on top of just being really cool songs, I really go back and listen to his really neat, weird 70s country music. they just did some really fun, neat things on his recordings. The drum beats are not exactly what you'd imagine. They're certainly not what you'd think for country music at the time. And they had like this really neat 70s flair. The bass playing had some really neat, fun stuff on it. Specifically, the song called Fare Thee Well, Miss Carousel is just I think a recording masterpiece. It's just the weirdest thing. And there's even like drumming mistakes in it that are pretty blatant, but it feels unlike any other kind of country song. But at the same time, it just feels really country. Check him out. Check out Tecumseh Valley. It's just a heartbreaker. Fellers, what did anybody think about? Had anyone heard this or any thoughts?
I had not heard it. I think it's a good song. It's one of those country songs that just tells a complete story so succinctly and poetically. Like the lyrics are, I think, really really solid.
But it's not long.
No,
and it's not
exactly.
And it's not overly descriptive. It's just the right words. It's kind of like
it paints the whole, like, you can kind of fill it in your head very easily, and you kind of very quickly get this sad story. How sad and tragic it is.
It's hard to describe, but it's a little like a Hemingway book in that it's very sparse, but it's so, like, the words are chosen so well that each one kind of is packed full of stuff.
Do you remember? Did we talk about this song? The one that's like, it's basically a like a family over dinner talking about whatever happened to this guy, like a kid who like jumped off a bridge. I'll find it.
Whatever happened at the something bridge? That
one?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, there was a movie about that and everything. That was
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a big song. It got here we are on the podcast again, going like, oh, I don't know what it's called, but maybe Holt will look it up while we talk
the
about
listeners
other stuff.
can Google it.
Oh yeah. Whatever happened to the Star Trek bridge? That was
That's cool. You know what happened to it? It engaged.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It reminded me of a lot of music you hear. Like, I don't have a very extensive knowledge of country music, especially from this era, but it reminded me a lot of like songs that like the Coen brothers would use to add flavor, especially in their like more serious, sadder films. And yeah, I totally
They did use towns in Big Lebowski.
In Big Lebowski, yeah. I missed the time when like a song would have a like totally complete story. Like, it's not like he's going, like, nothing's extraneous, and he's not, like you said, using like the most over the top flowery speech or anything. It reminds me of like certain Kinks songs from the '60s would be like that too, where it's like really like beginning, middle, and end. And it's like even the Beatles wouldn't really like do that. They always had to be like a little more like oblique at some point. Yeah, it's pretty impressive, like, to be able to pull that off. And like
it's funny you mention that. So Malcolm Gladwell's second season of his podcast, fantastic, but he ends it
better than this one.
Tied. We'll call it a tie.
We need our 10,000 hours to be.
It's called Revisionist History. The last show of the season, I think it was the last or right near it, was about the he goes into this long thing about, why is it that country music can be so earnest and straightforward, and rock music has to be kind of oblique and mysterious. And it's a pretty fun podcast, except that he's really down on rock music in it, even though I know he's a big, I mean, like, Elvis Costello is one of his favorite artists ever, which he covers in another podcast. But he's really hard on rock music. The thing that I feel like he leaves out, and I don't think it's fair, is that like rock music kind of had to be spoken in code for the longest time. It was black musicians talking about, sex. Like, there's no way you could get away with that by being like straightforward,
There's also a lot going on in rock music, like from the late 60s on, like instrumentally, I mean, that like you don't have time, like he can fit all those words in there because it's not like he has a full band with like a riff that starts the song or something. It's just like chords and voice. And like, that allows you to, your lyrics are clearer.
Your song
you're not
the
screaming or yelping. You're not Robert Plant or something.
You're not experimenting with the form much other than the melody.
Yeah, which is fine. That's not at all a knock in the opposite direction either.
Same
but
here.
It's like, it makes sense that, like dance music, there's often not too much lyrics because it's about the beat and you have like a hook or something, like.
So you're not generally getting much of a story in that anyway. Cause
it just
that's not what it's about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think rock is a similar thing where like you almost don't have enough space for a lot of words.
Well, I think that there are tons and tons of like really successful stories within rock music. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of coming back because, I do believe that in the Gladwell piece, he was really kind of making an analogy to the politics of like, people who generally like country music aren't afraid to speak plainly, and I think he's making kind of an analogy,
like a demographic,
right? Exactly. But at the same time, I do think that it's annoying that he framed it in this way that kind of undercuts what rock music actually had to do to get into the mainstream and kind of leaving out that.
That's
kind
true.
of,
It's also like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but what you would consider rock music must be like several times more expansive than what is country.
Exactly,
like it's like
yeah.
comparing it's like comparing oil painting to like 15th century sculpture or something. Like one of them's just like a huge breadth of stuff. Like you can have weird stuff like Talking Heads or whatever, or Pixies, or like really your Pavement, like weird lyrics. And then you can have like
and you can have
the Kinks, like, and
exactly.
they're very straightforward lyrics, or like, well, or Bon Jovi singing about working at the docks or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing too. Like, what, like, is this country or is this roots like folk music?
I think those. I could see those. I mean, I group those together all the time.
I mean, well, like, so that classic Scottish ballad, "Me Attractive Scooter," my attractive tractor, that got made into like a full-fledged song.
You think my tractor? You think my
Was
tractor
this
looks
like,
sexy?
wait, was this like a viral video that someone set to music? I've never heard of this.
I think
It's a
he's
Scottish, like, it's an old like Appalachian Mountain ballad
Oh, I see.
about how she thinks that this guy's tractor is attractive.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Does she think attractive is the adjective form of tractor?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's sort of, well, it's like a play on words.
Right.
That's what. So basically, in the country song version is what I'm trying to get to. He
And-
just says she thinks my tractor's sexy.
Yeah.
It's just straight to the point,
Mm-hmm.
clean,
He's
simple.
Yep.
mincing words.
Yeah.
He's not using flowery language.
Nope. Yeah.
Just plain talk,
Yeah,
straight
that's
talk.
right. There's no Robert Burns
I
in
think
this
that guy's
poetry.
name is Trace. What's that guy's name?
Trace Horney.
No.
I can't help you.
Yeah, I can't help. I'm scanning the number of people I know named Trace, and it's just,
Ode to Billy Joe.
Oh, that's the
Yeah.
bridge one.
Tallahatchie Bridge, Southern Gothic
Tallahatchie
track.
Bridge.
But I felt that this kind of had that, like, I mean, they're both ballads. They both kind of have, well, that one's more like first person narrative, but
The Tallahatchie Bridge one?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I was like, is he still talking about? She thinks my tractor's sexy.
That is first person.
from the
Sure
tractor's
is.
Says
point of
mine.
view.
Oh, that would
See
make
you
that
looking
song-
at me, girl.
Get your flesh away from me.
Beep, beep. I was a star in Footloose.
That's
I'm a tractor.
right. I was in Can't Buy Me Love. I'm too good for this shit. Well, I'm worried you're on too much ethanol.
Had anyone heard the song before I recommended it? Or had
I'd
anyone...
heard this track before, yeah.
This is new to me, as they say.
New to me also.
Have you, I mean, Jules, you probably listened to the Towns Van Zandt when we did
Yes.
the other stuff. But Adam, have you listened to any, like, have you watched, like, Heartworn Highway or?
No, I'm not really familiar at all. I don't think. Like I know the name vaguely,
Mhm.
but yeah.
Like, that's the sort of what, like it's like an early rock or like country documentary or song documentary.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
him and Steve Earle are both in it.
Yep.
And Charlie Daniels before he loved our president. You can see a young Steve Earle and you see Van Zandt in his shack
Mhm.
that he was like off the grid in writing most of his music in the 70s.
Which is funny. I mean, perhaps he was cut off from his family's wealth at the time, but I mean, the guy was so wealthy. The fact that he
Right.
was living in this way,
I mean, it's
it's
self-imposed.
kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps not.
Well, it sounds too like looking at sort of his history that his music writing was encouraged by his father was like, yeah, do it.
Oh, good.
Like get out there and write music. And I mean, he was successful in making enough money to keep himself in drugs and alcohol.
Now, son, you can only play music if you can afford enough drugs. Keep writing the music.
I'll pay for your trailer, but I ain't paying for your drugs. You got to get that. You got to earn that.
I'll pay for your shock treatments. That's clean.
All the Van Zants get them on their 18th birthday.
Every 18 years is a new birthday at the Van Zants.
Guy Clark is his buddy. He's also in Heartworn Highways, and he's also the guy that was playing in the Bluebird Cafe with him. Guy
Oh, okay.
Clark, or if he was French, Guy Clark. But
Yeah.
Clark.
but he's from
I don't
Texas, so they say
think he's
Guy Clark.
You don't think a Frenchman wandered into Texas
Yeah.
and was like, I know what I will do.
Guy,
Lazy country.
Guy Clark.
Clark.
Where is the blueetta?
Anyway, that's a great record. You should look it up. And the song Katie Bell that I have featured previously, is on the Live at the Bluebird Cafe record with Guy Clark and Steve Earle.
All right.
Mhm.
So where, if people wanted to listen to more Steve Earle, what would you like? Poncho and Lefty's the big one,
Mm-hmm.
and this one is like, where does this land in terms of his tracks for you?
I would say my pantheon of his is probably 12 deep at least. So this is definitely in the top 8 or 9. It's really great. Maybe even a top 6. Tops for me of his, I would have to say, is probably Fare Thee Well, Miss Carousel. I think it's just the weirdest cool song. But Poncho and Lefty, it's weird. The first time I heard Townes Van Zandt was his version of Poncho and Lefty, and I grew up listening to the Willie Nelson, Merle Haggard version. And I was just like, who's this dude ruining this song? It really takes a while to get used to the way he sings, and it's weird. I mean, they sound nothing alike, but the singer from the Decemberists, Colin Malloy, had the same effect on me, where for the longest time I was just like, what is going on? And then just like a switch one day, it kind of flipped, and I was just like, okay, I get it. I really like this. So,
It's funny. I had that problem with Bob Dylan.
yeah.
Forever, I was like, this guy's voice is so annoying. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, I like it.
Yeah, it's just, in spite of everyone telling you have to like Bob Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a family where Bob Dylan was played probably almost every day. My mom's a huge fan. And though his voice never grated on me too much, when he started playing when he started to play the harmonica, I'm like, oh no! And still today, whenever on my iPhone now, I have a whole mix of Bob Dylan songs. And still, sometimes when he starts playing the harp, I take my headphone out, just like, here it goes. But that's stupid. He's great.
It is I who is the idiot.
Let that be clear, listeners in podcast land.
Sorry, Bob Dylan. I suck. You're awesome.
It's funny. Just this week, I learned that he won the Nobel Prize for Poetry. I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it like 2 years ago or something? Or
I think it might have been last year, because remember, he
Yeah.
didn't accept it for the longest
Yeah, I
time.
didn't
Totally
show
missed
up.
it.
He didn't
Totally
show up for
missed
his
it.
Oscar for Forrest Gump either.
Wow.
But you know what? That's so
Rude.
Bob Dylan.
Well,
That's
AKA
so Bob
Robert Zemeckis. Little known fact, that's his original.
Or Zimmerman, right?
It's really not.
Oh, no, Zemeckis, yeah.
Robert Zimmermeckes.
Yeah, known singer, songwriter, filmmaker.
God, he's so multi-talented.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But there's funny, because I one time, another previous discussion on the show was Bob Dylan's second side of Blonde on Blonde. One of the things that I tried to cover very eloquently, I'm sure, was the neat recording stuff that they did on that. The kind of they really went far out in the recording and treated his songs in an interesting way. And it's that same 70s. I keep coming back and calling it 70s mentality, but obviously it was born in the 60s. But this kind of neat, we're going to try to break some rules in the studio and also just cut loose and have some fun too. And that's what's so cool about some of the early 70s Townes Van Zandt stuff. It's just, I know I'm just dropping a bunch of dumb names, but Neil Diamond has some similar things in some of the recording where you're just like, whatever he's doing, these other guys are doing it. All kind of influenced each other. It was really neat.
Cool.
But you could tell there must have been some engineers or producers working on his stuff who were just like, you'll just let me do whatever I want. All right, here we go. Hand claps. It is.
Yeah, it was
Chipmunk voice.
I looked into that first album too.
Yeah.
And I guess he must have been, before he recorded, he must have been playing or writing these songs, but I don't he must have been known as a musician, but so the album didn't go over super well because it was too produced.
Because they were like, that doesn't
Yeah,
sound like Townes Van Zandt.
There wasn't a guy and a guitar,
Mm.
basically. It was other instruments and a guy and a guitar. So it was more than
That's
people
what killed the
expected.
Grateful Dead.
Yep.
People you can't capture the live sound.
That's right.
No, man, it's because they didn't want to be a studio band.
That's right.
Maybe.
They didn't make records long enough for the jam.
Have any of you guys watched?
Ran out of tape, man.
There's a new documentary series on Amazon Prime all about the Grateful Dead,
Wow, no.
and
I don't need to see it. I lived it.
you thought you did.
Oh, yeah? Cool.
No, I watched. It's really well put together, and I mean, I.
So
like,
wait.
don't care
What
for
you're
their
saying
music
here
at all,
is-
so
What you're saying is that Julian Cage is recommending a documentary on
No,
Netflix?
no.
Oh, okay. Good. Just want to get that straight.
never. No, it's not on Netflix. It's on Amazon Prime.
Oh, there we go.
Totally
Never mind. Perfect.
But,
Yeah.
But do you remember what it's called?
Long Strange Trip.
Oh, cool. So I have several family members who have traveled with the band, the Grateful Dead. So
And then the Fish, their spiritual successors.
they never got on the Fish train, but definitely some cousins and uncles really got on board with the Grateful Dead. So
Yeah, I mean, I hate. I mean, hate's a strong word. I don't care for jam bands
you
in
just
general.
don't get it. Is all. You can just
It's
say
true.
it like that.
It's true. I don't
You're
get
square,
it.
man.
I don't get it, but
Just
what
gotta
was
let
ni-
it go, bro.
But what was nice about the long strange trip is it helped me understand the phenomenon a
Oh,
little
that's
bit
cool.
more.
Yeah.
I would need that because I also don't understand jam
Yeah.
bands and need help. Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't really help you like understand that, but
you just
it
feel better about your own life and decisions.
No, it just helps you understand the scene and the phenomenon
Yeah.
that they were, and probably why some people like that stuff. You know.
Yeah, there's a
Kind of like tailgate parties.
the Wilco record called Sky Blue Sky. Definitely one of my favorites of Wilco. It's right teetering on the edge. Some of the songs when I first heard it, I was just like, is this teetering over into jam band land? Because there gets to be a few where it's just like, depending upon who's listening to it, it might fall right into that category.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, did I stumble into a Dave Matthews concert?
I bet people would argue. Do jam band purists argue that Dave Matthews Band doesn't jam enough?
I'm sure.
Like their songs
I'm
are
sure.
pretty conventional, you know.
Well, on the record,
Oh, but live is. I believe it or not, I've never been to a
So-
DMB show.
I don't believe it.
So-
Actually,
Just like there's a clear distinction between like prog rock jamming and like Grateful Dead.
not to me. There's not.
jamming. Well, no, in terms
When,
of
when
like
I grew up,
yeah.
when I grew
technical
up,
precision versus
my
Versus acid
Versus.
precision.
Yeah,
technical precision
versus chill, man.
yeah. Whoa, am I even plugged in?
Hey, wow, we're on the same wavelength, brother.
Oh boy.
Wow. Wow.
Our whole jam band demographic is like leaving us,
something
guys. Cool it. No, but growing up, my mom, we had some VHS of some performance of Jimmy
Jimmy Eat
Page's
World.
band.
Oh, Led Zeppelin.
Thank you. Gee whiz, why can't I remember that?
Jimmy Page and the Led Zeps.
Jimmy Page and the Zippers. No, but there's just like they would go into these solos, and I'm
Yeah.
and I'm just like, it's the same thing as the Grateful Dead. It's all just these like getting into it and letting yourself go and
Yeah,
playing your guitar with a bass bow.
Yeah.
Are there any of those that you
Couldn't stand
did
it.
dig? Like we used to watch The Cure's Orange, and that one was like good. I don't know, good. Like are there any rock performances where they break it down and have fun? That
I really feel like you got to be on drugs to get into that. I mean, I would have to be on drugs to get into that.
I used to like when Led Zeppelin would play Moby Dick live and John Bonham would play the drums with his hands at one point. It just never stopped. I mean, it just feels like, I don't know, I feel like they're screwing around, but not like in a, we're really, I mean, he probably was really
They're
messed
not being
up.
pretentious about it. They're just
Well, or like that like mock spiritual thing that I think people find in jam bands. Again, I can't make it through a jam band show, even if I
Yeah.
like try to watch it on YouTube. So
But if you were sitting on the grass and allowing yourself to become one with nature, you'd be fine.
I
with it.
suppose if I would
Yeah.
grant nature access.
Or if you were standing naked
Yep.
behind the band, which like in every performance shot, there's a naked bearded man behind somebody. Like I'm just like,
Really?
yeah.
this
I think only you can see him, Jules.
you saw
that is-
God.
That's your guide.
Hey,
Your
Julian, it
It
spiritual
was
guide.
a long stretch.
Hello, Jules.
Is that man here right now?
What did he tell you to do?
There
Jules?
are strange bearded men. They still have their clothes
Right.
on.
But I got my zipper down.
Whoa.
Hey,
John, make sure you're undressing the mic. So you get
that's
that.
right.
Riffle, riffle, riffle.
Oh, I'm naked. So in someone who doesn't enjoy jams, when you were performing, if you ever like started soloing or something, was that like you're like, I hate this audience.
Hate myself. Yeah. Let's take this. Right.
Oh no, my solo went 26 seconds instead of 24. I hate myself.
God, I'm so, yeah. Can't believe I let myself go tonight.
They're like,
Yeah.
so the drummer's
Nick,
just
I'm
going
so
off
sorry.
for a while.
No way. Like I could not improvise very well for most of the Mr. Dream tenure. Also, like the songs were all under like 4 minutes, so yeah, there wasn't a lot of wiggle room.
But that's you guys broke up because like you would have like
'Cause you
drum,
wanted
like
to.
I want a drum solo.
We
And
have
you
one
guys are just
member.
like,
One member's still jamming. He doesn't know that
Walks
he doesn't
out.
know the show's over. He's in a DIY space in Bushwick.
Yeah, you just
playing
go.
the congas.
He's got an IV.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you and the
Got an
doctors
IV
look
drip.
through the glass and he's still playing.
Yeah,
We don't have the heart to break it.
yeah.
Still living the dream.
I'm sorry, Miss Johnson. He's still in there.
Yeah.
We can't get him out.
We're gonna have to unplug his MIDI drum set.
It's V drums.
Yeah.
Anyway, Townes Van Zandt.
Yeah, not a jam band.
No, but some really far out fiddle solos. If you listen to
Yeah.
some live stuff, as sad as this song is, it's still not even close to his saddest song. By the way, if you ever want to hear like probably the most desperate song ever written, it's most story song, most desperate. It's it's a song called Maria that he wrote. It's just devastating. It's about I won't go into it, but. If you think you've heard the saddest song, that one will.
Was it the one that's like baby shoes for sale?
It's like the song.
Never worn.
It's like the song version of a Lars von Trier film.
Yeah. Well, isn't there was a movie that came out. It was an indie
Get us
film,
started on this.
but it was called The Saddest Song in the World. And it was a contest. It was like this weird like indie movie that Ingrid Bergman's daughter, why can't I think of her name? Isabella Rossellini,
Oh,
isn't
right
it?
on.
And she's the heiress to this like brewery, some brewery in some really cold area, and she's in there. This has an international contest for people to come in and sing the saddest
like
song.
Molson?
Yeah, and she has no legs, so she has these glass legs that have beer in them. Oh, it's awesome. It's called The Saddest Song in the World. I saw it at the
Wow.
Sunshine Theater. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, rip.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bummer. I walked past the dumpster the other day.
Sunshine Theater in New York City has closed down. It was.
You know
a
why?
mainstay of
Movie
everything.
Pass killed it.
No.
Movie
Movie
Pass
Pass
a lot,
could have saved it.
YouTube.
Movie Pass killed the internet industry of movies.
Wait, what's it called again? That movie?
The saddest song in the world, I think.
Does she get the part?
No, she's the one. She's the judge.
Oh,
She's
the
the judge
saddest,
of
no, the
Oh.
saddest music in the
the.
world.
Oh, there you go.
Wow, and right on the cover are the legs with the beer. Wow, that's an amazing poster.
Wow.
I'm adding that to the queue.
Yeah. So Townes Van Zandt, fairly well Tecumseh Valley. While you're at it, listen to Maria if you want a sad cry, and listen and go see the movie the saddest music in the world.
Mhm.
And then
Heartworn
while you're at that,
Highways.
go ahead and watch Heartworn Highways. And what was that documentary, Jules, that's on something
Long
about the Grateful
Strange-
Dead?
Long Strange Trip.
Long Strange Trip.
All right.
It's like 6 hours. It's like 6 episodes.
Oh my god!
It
Is
is
it
a
like a
long
jam documentary?
Yeah, basically.
They just aim the camera at random stuff,
No, I feel like
put it down, and
the Woodstock documentary is kind of the jam band version
Oh.
of a documentary, I think.
I mean, isn't life just like a jam band documentary, guys?
Hey.
When you think about it.
That would be amazing to like in a meeting you just turn on your bootleg jam track and watch somebody's mouth work for a while.
Just go into a montage.
Yeah.
I keep waiting for that like weight loss montage to kick in, and then it'll be over, and I'm all done.
All right, Keith, good pick. So where
Thank
can
you.
people listen to this track?
You can listen to it anywhere, but an easy spot is YouTube. But he's on Spotify. There's
Mhm.
tons of stuff on Spotify. There's tons of stuff on iTunes Music. Go
Yep.
ahead and check
And
it
be
out.
careful. Andy Griffith's daughter, Nancy Griffith, covered it. And
She's not really Andy Griffith's daughter, is she? Because that would kind of make sense. The age works. But Nancy Griffith's version is pretty great.
no, it is. He actually
And
he
she
sings
does
backing
a-
on it.
Well, there's,
I want a
there-
paternity test.
No, he does sing backing.
She's
on
really Gomer Pyle's
it.
daughter.
Yeah, you should hear her whistling in Tecumseh Valley. It's my paternity test for her.
But there's a on YouTube. There's a version of her that's just her. There's a version of her where Townes backs her up. So checks that out.
They aren't sure. Could be it's not a real place. There is no Tecumseh Valley.
There might be a Tecumseh Valley.
They just think that it's either based. There's Oklahoma has a Spencer and a Tecumseh.
Oh, wow,
and
okay.
Indiana also has a Tecumseh.
In India.
India. It's.
It would make
Yes.
sense because Tecumseh was a famous Indian.
That's right.
Sorry, Native American.
Well, there's like a whole tribal area around there in Oklahoma.
And there's a really cool Grantley Buffalo song called "The Last Days of Tecumseh." Really cool. And my grandmother claims that we're related to him, but I don't think that's true.
Tecumseh Sherman.
No, to Tecumseh, the man.
Yeah, Tecumseh Sherman.
No, the man who invented an alphabet for the native.
Oh, all right.
Get that 23andMe and figure it out.
And it was many a man returned again to lay himself beside her. They found her down beneath the stairs that led to Gypsy Sally's, and in her hand when she died was a note.
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Years ago, the holies are
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the first in our series, Love for Sale. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at LordJoho, on Instagram at Board_Ghost. You can find my RPG podcast at BoardGhost.com. You can find my book club podcast at WoundandStab.com. Keith, where can people find you?
You can find me with headphones on listening to Wound and Stab because it's pretty dang good. But you can also see some of my artwork at earthlingkeith.com. And Jules?
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at BeautifulJules. How about you?
You can find me at adammater.com.
All right. Any music you got going on, Adam?
Let's see. I just re-upped my studio rent after taking a few months off. I'll be working on some stuff. Probably the Ohmsburg project, trying to wrap up an EP. And yeah, a couple other things. We'll see. Just played a show a couple of weeks ago at Sunnyvale with Ohmsburg. It's pretty fun.
Nice.
Trying to get the band back in shape. So yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. So before we get into what's coming up next week, I got something new to me.
Okay, good.
All right.
Hey,
so
John, before we wrap up, what's new to you?
What's new to me is a documentary.
What?
It's not really a documentary. It's a biopic. Biopic. It's a little like
So a bionic
It's
pick?
based on a book
Mm-hmm.
that's based on the life of Doug Kinney and the creation of the National Lampoon and up until his demise. Documentary's on Netflix. It's a Netflix production. It's called.
It's not a documentary.
It's not a documentary. The biopic is called A Stupid and Futile Gesture, and it sort of follows. It starts with like pseudo documentary style, an older man talking to a camera and sort of like addressing a director off set with like a montage of Lampoon art behind him, kind of laying out like I'm Doug Kinney and this is my life, and like kind of being funny and like jibing with the guy. And he kind of starts with his childhood and says, fuck that, let's start at the fun part. Goes to his like him at the Lampoon in Harvard in the 60s, and him like meeting Henry Beard, who in the Will Forte plays young in these like flashbacks, plays young Doug Kinney, and the actor who I think he was in Harry Potter is one of the Weasley twins, but he's Hux in the new Star Wars movies. The redheaded general guy. He plays Henry Beard, and the two who's sort of the duo that were pretty like important at the Lampoon for a while in Harvard, and who moved on after graduating, sort of forestalled Henry's plans of going into being a lawyer or whatever, and went into making the National Lampoon. So they go through that story, and it's cameo after cameo of all these different actors playing,
But not real cameos.
not real cameos. Yeah, so
Because they're cameos of actors playing famous Lampoon associated people.
Right. So you'll have the tall guy from Community who
Chevy Chase?
Chevy Chase, played by
Oh,
the tall guy from Community who was like on Talk Soup.
Yeah.
Oh, Joel McHale.
Yeah, Joe McHale. So Joe McHale plays Chevy Chase
Gotcha.
in this,
That's
and
meta.
Wow, yeah.
yeah. So it's like all kinds of fun like characters are all over it. David Wayne, I think, directed it. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, but the setup, if you don't know Doug Kinney's life, is, this older man telling you what's going on and kind of leading you through this whole thing, like his first wife and like screwing around and all the craziness, basically like the rock and roll lifestyle of running the Lampoon, that then like twists into his movie career doing Caddyshack, and before that Animal House, and all of his friends and coworkers sort of like twisting over to go to SNL and all this stuff. And then it gets to where he's like strung out, he's been coked out, and like he's in a bad way, and he kind of actually has a pretty big breakdown at the end of making Caddyshack. Like he's really mad about the whole thing, and he goes to Hawaii to get clean, and he like, you're like, okay, well, what's going to happen next? And then they like cut to someone getting the phone call, and he has like, they found his body at the bottom of a cliff.
Wow.
And so then the rest of the scene is like a funeral for Doug Kinney. And so this this actor who's playing old Doug Kinney is talking to Will Forte's ghost now at the funeral. And yeah, it's a stupid and futile gesture because he kills him, but it's fucking with your expectations because it's making you think,
Oh, he's
alive,
old. Yeah.
he's like,
Right.
He's survived to tell his tale kind of thing. And so, but it's weird and funny and has a lot of characters and very particular perspectives, and it's cartoonish. Yeah, I think that's to like get across who this character was and sort of his filter of the world around him.
How does it make the leap? Like, were they allowed to be called the National Lampoon? Like,
'Cause
was
it
there
doesn't
an
matter.
association to the Harvard
I think
Lampoon?
they licensed it.
Yeah. I
So
think they
the
did
the
too.
Harvard Lampoon though predates it by a long
It's
shot,
from like
right?
the
By a while.
19th
Yeah.
century. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like-
Yeah.
And so
it's 1876.
What,
is the Lampoon.
when they made the National Lampoon, the Lampoon in Harvard, they didn't mind being
I
associated.
think they got some money
They
for a
licensed
couple of years. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, they just said like, "Hey, we're gonna license Lampoon." I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they were in part of the Lampoon for like,
for college. Yeah.
yeah, and then moved on from there.
Yeah.
And hired a bunch of non-Lampoon writers to be their crew, and a lot of those writers went on to write and
Saturday Night
they
Live.
started Lemmings and then went on to write SNL.
Right.
Yeah, it's all like The Onion now or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is a lot of people may or may not realize this, but a lot of the old early SNL sketches were pretty much just already sketches in the National Lampoon's like Radio Hour.
Yep,
and
Radio
stuff
Hour.
Like that.
They talk about that and like Lemmings. Basically, this guy was a mile a minute, dealing with a lot of crazy. Like they definitely play up his psychology of his youth against his actions in his life, kind of thing. His whole like his older brother. He's like from a rich family. His older brother, I don't know, like a wealthy Midwestern family. His older brother like died of kidney failure in his teens, and that was kind of, he was like a young tennis ingenue or something, and that was it. Like that was he never really lived up to his father's expectations after that. And so a lot of the
Even
movies,
getting into Harvard.
well, no, but yeah, like you get into Harvard,
It's
but
probably
then
a
you
family
kind of
where
like
everyone went to.
goof around, and then in quotes, and then he's buying them houses and making movies, but it's it's that like it's all perception too. You don't know, this is it's a writer's perception, a biographer's perception of this guy's perception as how recounted or how like drawn out, but it creates an interesting narrative. And yeah.
So a
very
couple
meta.
years ago, maybe about 3, I was working at a studio, and they were doing all the graphics for the Drunk, Stoned, Brilliant, and Dead documentary, which is an actual like way more straight documentary about the National Lampoon. It's pretty good,
Oh, wow.
and you should check it out. It's pretty informative. And, and funny, wacky graphics all over the place too. It's really neat, like nicely done.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I recommend it. Lots of funny characters and character actors, and like if even just like a little bit about that period, like the Lampoon, Mike O'Donoghue, the Annie Beats, any of those guys, like just kind of seeing.
Those are all writers of the very first SNL stuff.
And they're
in
also
fact, the very first sketch, I want to feed your fingers to the Wolverines. The guy who's the guy who's
yes, Mr. Mike. Yeah.
right. And that's Donahue.
Yep,
Mike
Donahue.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, that's that one. Go check it out. It's
cool.
on Netflix.
Cool.
That's what's new to me. It's also 6 hours long.
So it's like the jam band.
Light and tight. It's a good one.
Good. Good suggestion. I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, but I've spoiled the fuck you ending. So
Yeah, way to go.
Yeah, we would have never gotten that from just reading Wikipedia.
well, why would you have read Wikipedia if you didn't know already and you had not read Wikipedia? Would you know?
I knew because I saw the other documentary, but yeah.
I mean, I'd heard of it, and I was kind of like, that's kind of weird. They made a biopic about this guy. He's not that famous, kind of.
I mean, he
But-
directed, he wrote and directed.
I was
2
just curious about
movies.
like what made his life worth telling. You know, that was kind of my.
I kind of have a feeling it's similar to that Dune, that movie about
Jodorowsky.
the Todorowsky Dune that
Yeah.
came out. It's just like, this is the guy that assembled this powerhouse team that affected comedy literally for
Yeah.
20, 30 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true.
Like he lured a friend away from like going into his career and life and business
Mm-mm.
into like taking on this crazy venture, and was sort of like the manic nonstop driving engine of work behind this thing, and made it go for a long time till he
Yeah.
broke
I think it's
Coke
interesting
fueled.
too. Like when Harold Ramis died, what was that, 2 years ago, 1 or 2 years
You know,
ago?
it was longer than
Maybe
that,
a little
but
bit
yeah.
longer. It was interesting because you see it growing up. You're like, oh my god, like Bill Murray's so funny, Chevy Chase is so funny, and Rodney Danger, like anyone who's like, or Belushi, and it's like, yeah, those guys are great, but like Bill Murray isn't producing a movie himself and writing it himself. Like you need these glue guys. Like Harold Ramis was always my least favorite Ghostbuster, for example. And it's partially by design, but it's like he's the sort of guy who like helps make that movie make sense. Like Dan Aykroyd's initial script was bonkers and was like unshootable or unmarketable. And I think a similar thing is true with Kenny here, where it's like you don't realize that this stuff happened probably because of him, even though he wasn't like a performer on camera. It's like interesting. Same way with music, with like a producer that isn't the most famous person in the world, but it's like, oh yeah, this guy made like every
Yeah.
album, like every U2 album or something or whatever it is.
Glynis Johns, this guy who is or Glenn Johns, you read his book and it turns out he's had his fingers in like every record you can imagine, from the Stones to Bowie to some Beatles stuff. And he's a guy like that where you're just like, oh my God, his fingers are on everything.
Yeah. So I kind of like when those stories are highlighted a little bit because, it's not all, not everyone can be like David Bowie or Bill Murray or something where, you get all the fame. It's clear like why you're famous or whatever. It's like there are all these people, I don't know, behind the scenes kind of holding it together, making it work, having the idea in the first place even. And then like Caddyshack's a great example where like that movie was a disaster, should have been.
Yeah.
It should have never worked. And they just like somehow, reading Harold Ramis's interviews about that is pretty amazing too, because it's just like, oh man, let's just like fly Rodney Dangerfield down here and see what we can do. Like, and Chevy Chase, like it was such a piece. Or Bill Murray, I think, was a late addition too, and it was like they really like, because that guy, the Danny story, is just horrible. It's just boring.
And there's a reason why it kind of, no one remembers that that's even a part of the movie.
He's the main. He's supposed to be the main character. It's like a coming of age story, and like he has no quotes. He has no one really cares. I mean, obviously everything like orbits him.
Yeah.
But it's just
so
like
loosely.
Yeah, it's like so insanely loose. I'd be
Oh,
curious.
by the way, his girlfriend's pregnant in the thing, and like no one ever remembers that about Caddyshack.
No, like to watch, it'd be fascinating to watch a cut of that movie with just his scenes. Like he has to be in every scene. It'd be like a 20-minute movie.
Yeah.
It wouldn't really be that funny. It'd be like a bad episode of like an 80s show or something.
Yep, and it would probably be about 22 minutes, like an 80s
Yeah,
show.
exactly. Yeah.
There is a great scene in it where what's the guy he's in? He was in The State, and he's now in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Jolo Truglia.
Yeah, he plays the like studio exec who is producing. He produced Animal House, and Animal House was a huge success.
Oh, in the movie you're talking about, not in Caddyshack.
In this thing, but then so he's the producer of Caddyshack now.
Oh, okay.
And he kind of comes up to them and is like, I had the ILM guys make this gopher. You need to put it in the movie." And like and it devolves into them like Kenny, Will Forte's character beating him with this thing as they like wrestle in front of a crowd of people before he gets kicked off the lot. Like,
Oh man.
it was it's just bedlam, like the whole thing. So
Animal House too is. I mean, these movies are down in kind of like the annals of comedy history, and maybe within the context, deservedly so. But boy, they're not at all like perfect movies.
No, especially in like
aged very well.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because like comedies have gotten, well, all movies have gotten so formulaic, or they're so like market tested to death, and it is funny to see these like very imperfect, not even like likable protagonists in a lot of these movies. You're kind of like, you deserve to fail in whatever you're.
Well, it's like it not even likable protagonists, but just like barely threaded together. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but Porky's has like a more strong story thread
Sure.
than Animal House.
Or it's funny too watching like Billy Madison, which is another like completely stupid story.
Yeah.
But they just have to have this one scene where they're just like, "You're telling me I have to go through every grade, and then I can," like, he just spills out the stakes.
This is the
spits it-
story.
Yeah.
Right here. Yeah.
So get my dad's coming. It's just like, you can tell even by the 90s, they're like, okay, you can do whatever dumb stuff you want. Just say clearly what's at
bring it all
stake
back
here.
home. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
and
I think it's because all these like how to write movies like
yeah.
books came out.
Well,
and
it also-
people were like, okay, I'll just have this template here,
Sure.
and then I just put a
And
bunch
for
of
every
weird
Caddyshack,
gags.
there's like 50 horrible movies that just we don't even know about today
Ski
because
School.
they
Yeah.
just like fell flat on their face, and it makes sense. Studios probably lost tons of money and stuff, but yeah,
And we got to get the next Animal House.
yeah,
yeah, and another thing they address in the movie is like he does Animal House, it's a success. He's working on Caddyshack, and Airplane comes out, and it's like a total left turn.
It's like in
not
the-
in the same
yeah.
like vein. Like it just
And way better.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm way more of an airplane.
But it's like
Me
a different.
too.
It's like another kind of innovation
Yeah.
and like craziness.
yeah.
right.
And that's like you have people like you have your formula, your mainstream stuff, but there's still people making those things, on the sides and in the fringes
Mhm.
that like challenge things and push them.
Wonder what he felt like when Groundhog Day came out.
He probably
Well,
watched it a few
He was
times
already
over.
dead.
Yeah.
He's already dead. Thank God, I would have killed him again.
And again and again.
But that was cool. I can't wait to watch this whole.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Good job, Holt.
Thanks. So next week we're gonna continue our Love for Sale theme with whose pick? Who wants to go next?
Is it
Yeah.
Julian or Adam?
I can go. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, go ahead, Jules.
Do you want to do
All right.
it?
No, you go ahead.
All right,
I mean, I
we're
don't
gonna
care.
we're gonna
I really don't
tackle
care.
we're gonna
It
tackle
would mean the
some-
world to me if you would go.
Okay, I'll go next. Just because
Jules'
I'm
pick.
fading, so I probably should go next, so I don't crash. All right, you were.
Boy,
Go
way
for
to
it.
make
Oh,
more
I gotta
stuff
say
for
what's
Holt to
next.
edit.
Wow,
Oh, wait.
can't wait for next week's episode with a fading Julian.
So next week, I'm bringing a documentary, big surprise,
Hey.
called Meet the Falcons.
Ugh,
It's a
Conan.
2011 documentary. And I believe right now you can see it catch it on Vimeo, or you
Mhm,
can also buy it on Amazon and things like that. And so I'll be talking about that. So check it out.
But it's also called something else, like Warden or something,
What's
right?
Well, I'm saving that. I'm saving
Oh,
that
okay,
for
got
next
it.
week.
Okay, got it. Okay,
Meet the
sorry.
Falcons.
Yeah.
Starring Robert De Niro.
Aren't his twin?
Well,
Helga
I
De
can't wait to
Niro.
watch it.
Yeah.
I wonder what it's about. Is it like an interesting like
I think it's when-
Northern European take
Well, I think
on
it's
Meet
when
the
Ben
Fockers?
Ben Stiller meets this Dutch girl, and it's just going so great. And then he has to meet the parents in Amsterdam.
Comedy ensues.
Yeah.
And it turns
And
out
guess what's legal in Amsterdam?
Sitcoms about people with Down syndrome.
I thought this was kale salad.
You won't believe what they did to that cat.
Yep. So you can hear me elaborate on that plot next week.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to another episode of New to You Show. That's not how we do it here.
Can we already do that?
Tune in next week. Because it may be not new, but maybe it
It's
is new to you.
New to you.
Explosion sound.
Time to rest, but I gotta keep moving. This pitiful life is all about the music. 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 This pitiful life is all about the music.
Be with him together forever. Without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not there. They're two separate